What's going on, my people? Welcome back to another episode of the Stop the Count podcast. In this episode, we will be talking about the weekend that was in the UFC and in the boxing world, as well as the Chivas game. Although, first, we'll get into some news. Dana White came out and made official many fights and Fight Night main events. The biggest, of course, being the co-main event for UFC 288, Bilal Muhammad versus Gilbert Burns. What an amazing fight, and hopefully the winner gets a title shot against Leon Edwards next, but I do believe that they're still waiting for Colby Covington to get that title shot. Some of the other Fight Night main events announced were Jack Hermansson versus Brandon Allen on June 3rd. Also announced was Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier on June 17th. The Josh Emmett versus Ilya Topuria fight was made official for June 24th. And the last fight that was announced was Sean Strickland versus Abus Magomedov. Some great main events await us for the UFC. In some more announcements, for UFC 290, Jalen Turner will be fighting Dan Hooker. This fight was supposed to happen at UFC 287, but it was canceled due to Dan getting injured. Also announced was Robert Whitaker will be facing Dricus Duplessis on that same fight night, and I believe the winner will face Izzy later on in the year. And this card keeps getting better and better, as it now looks as if Sean Brady and Jack Della Maddalena is in talks to be made on this card as well. Now for boxing. First into some news, the fights between Alberto Puyol and Rolly Romero. This fight is now off as Puyol has tested positive for a banned substance and stripped of his title. It now looks as if they are looking to match up Rollies with an opponent for the vacant belt. Now getting into some of the fights from this weekend. I'll get into the Bellator card first. I'll start off by talking about Aaronpico. He was able to pull off the decision victory against a replacement opponent in James Gonzalez, as his opponent was supposed to be Otto Rodriguez, but he had to pull out of their fight. Now, as for what happened, Aaron really mixed everything well, from body shots to wrestling, and pretty much dominated Gonzalez. Now for the main event, we'll get into it. The raufeonstots versus patchymix fight. Patchymix was able to knock out Stotts with an amazing knee right to the chin in the very first round. What a way to end the fight. It now looks as he will be facing the winner of Sergio Pettis versus Patricio Pitbull. On the ground or on the feet, Patchymix can do it all. Now we'll get into the UFC card. It started off again with some very good close fights. I'll start off by talking about Muhammad Usman versus Junior Tafa. It was a very good, even fight between the two, but what really set the fight apart was Muhammad being able to control Junior on the ground for most of the second and third rounds. This led to Muhammad winning by unanimous decision. Now, getting into the Bobby Green versus Jared-Gordon fight. This fight ended in a no contest as a Bobby Green headbutt led to him being able to finish Jared on the ground, and since it was a headbutt that dropped Gordon, it is ruled as a no contest. Now for the main event, Sergeipavlovich versus Curtisblaydes. It started off great as both fighters were going at it, and of course that's the worst thing that could have happened for Curtis, as he did not attempt a takedown until he was hurt. And in my opinion, this ultimately cost him the fight, as Sergey was able to land hard shots and he was able to get Curtis out of there in the very first round, continuing his first round knockout streak. What a statement made by Sergey. Now for you guys, who does Sergey fight next? In my opinion, he should wait for the title shot. Now we'll get into boxing. Next, I'll get into the Matchroom boxing card. I'll get into the Jordan Thompson fight. He was in a tough fight against Luke Watkins with some good moments for both fighters, but it all led to Jordan winning by knockout in the 6th round, continuing his undefeated record. It was an all-around good card with many action-packed fights. Now we'll get into the main event, Shavkatrakhmonov versus joecordina. The first 2 rounds started off great for Joe, with Joe being the one surprisingly pressuring Rakhimov and even knocking him down in the 2nd round. The 3rd, Rakhimov really started to pick it up, and Joe really wasn't moving as much as people thought. And at the start of the 5th, the bodywork started to pay off for Rakhimov, as it looked as if he hurt Joe. Now during the 6th, a straight right hand opened a cut over Rakhimov's left eye, and Joe was attacking the eye, really leading it to swell up and close in the 7th round. Now the swelling of the eye didn't cause the fight to end, but it did play a major role in the fight, as it looked as if Rakhimov couldn't get out of the way of the straight right hands. The rounds were still close, but I feel Joe was always able to pull the rounds off. Now, the fight ended in a surprising split decision victory for joecordina, as one judge had it 116, 111 for Rakhmonov, and honestly, that was probably one of the worst scorecards of the night. There's no way that joecordina only won 3 rounds. Anyways, who do you guys see Joe fighting next? Finally, I'll get into the PBC boxing card. First, I'll talk about Lorenzo Simpson. He was able to shut out a very durable opponent, leading to a unanimous decision victory for Lorenzo. A great performance by Lorenzo. Another will be Floyd Schofield. He put on a dominant performance as he was able to knock his opponent down in the first and get him out of there in the second. Now, getting to Elijah Garcia's fight, he didn't really start off the best, but he was able to really take control after a few rounds and ultimately win by decision. Now, talking about the Beck the Bully fight versus Gabe Rosado. This fight sucked. I expected so much more from these two. I stopped watching. Beck won by decision, and it now looks as if Gabe has decided to retire, ending a great career. Now, talking about David Morrell versus Yamaguchi Falcao. David was just dominant, knocking Yamaguchi out in the first round. Complete domination. What a fighter. In my opinion, it's time to say fuck the Benavidez versus Canelo fight. I want to see David Morrell fight Benavidez. This will be such a great fight. Now getting into the main event, Gervonta Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia. Now the first was a feeling out round, but I'd give that round to Ryan because I feel as if he was the one pressuring Tank more and also landing more shots. The second was a great start of the round for Ryan until he was eventually dropped by a great left hand, making this a 10-8 round for Tank. The third was a good round for Tank, as it looked as if Ryan was too scared to get countered, winning Tank that round. The fourth was a pretty much even round, but I would have to give that one to Tank also, as I believe he was able to land the cleaner shots on Ryan. Now the fifth, I would say, was also another decent round. Tank again would take that round, as Ryan just looks as if he's not being able to land. The sixth was a round that I would give to Ryan, as I feel he was able to land the cleaner shots. Now at the start of the seventh was a better round for Ryan, but it didn't last long, as Tank landed a body shot, leaving Ryan unable to continue. A great end to a fight, and Tank was just dominant. There is nothing either of these two could have lost from this night. I feel where it went wrong for Ryan was he was trying to please the fans too much. Ryan really wasn't using his reach nor keeping his distance, none of that. Ryan was pressuring Tank but was too scared to open up because he'd get countered. A good question I seen on Twitter was, do you think Ryan quit on himself? And personally, I do think Ryan did quit on himself, but that doesn't take away from the great body shot Tank landed, an absolute killer. Now, for a question for you guys, do you think the rehydration clause made a big difference? Now, there's also speculation that Tank had some inside information from someone in Ryan's camp about Ryan getting hurt to the body during sparring. Now, I feel as if that's very damaging to the mental of a fighter, and Ryan probably had all those thoughts going through his head when he was dropped that second time. And even during the post-fight press conference, Tank's whole team showed up for him. Everybody, Mayweather, his coaches, Al Heyman. And for Ryan, all I seen was just his close family and his advisor, Lupe. Oscar De La Hoya wasn't there, Bernard Hopkins wasn't there, and probably most importantly, Joe Goosen wasn't there. At the time Ryan needed them the most, they left him there alone. Now, getting into the Chivas game, the game started, and for me, the biggest flaw is still there for Chivas, as Pollo Briseño started off horrible, and as the game went on, there were more errors from both teams, but nothing came of it. That was until the 37th minute, where a lack of concentration and communication in the defense left Uriel Antuna wide open, and that led for a nice pass from Juan Escobar, leading to a goal for Antuna. Now, it wasn't just Pollo's fault. Chicote did get beat, and Huacho, although it looked as if it wasn't going to be a hard shot to stop, he wasn't able to stop it. Now, as the second half started, Banu made a change and finally put Pochoguzman back in a more natural position for him in the midfield, and 7 minutes later, this paid dividends as Pocho scored the equalizer. Now, at the 75th minute, Ronaldo Cisneros pounced on a loose ball after a save from Chuy Corona and scored the goal that put Chivas up 2-1. From here, Chivas decided to defend, and it was going smoothly for them, and towards the end, things were starting to get chippy between the two sides, leading to many yellow cards being given out and even a red card to Ramiro Funes Mori as the match ended 2-1. That leaves Chivas in third place, tied in points with America, but behind them because of goal differential. Now, the key to every single soccer game ever will be the midfield and who could win the midfield battle. And it showed in this game as Cruzazul was dominating the midfield in the first half. But the change that Pauno made that put Pocho in the midfield really helped Chivas win the second half battle. To me, honestly, the first half really wasn't Pocho's best game, as obviously he is playing out of position in a false nine, and it really showed as he wasn't able to do anything. He was always out of position, not where the striker is supposed to be, not being able to make good runs to the goal. And it's just great that Pauno was able to see that and move him back into the midfield position. Thank you guys for staying until the end. See you guys later on this week as we preview the upcoming fights. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Twitter at StopTheCount10. See you then.